My week has been really interesting. Last Friday, I came out to Canada, and I've just been, seeing what the country has to offer. I've been in Calgary. I am currently now in Naramata, Canada, which is really dope. I'm at a bed and breakfast, which is beautiful. It's on a winery. I'm next to a pool. I'm just sitting in the middle of nature. I don't know if you can hear the waterfall that's built into this place. It's insane. And just feeling really in touch with nature. But this episode is the episode that I wanted to put out last week, but I couldn't because my computer crashed. Whack. But my computer's back up and running, so I got the episode that I wanted to have. And this one features a conversation with my frat brother, who is a mental health specialist and an author. And he wrote this book called, hold on, let me make sure I get it right, Heal or Repeat, Breaking the Cycle of Intergenerational Trauma. And we had about a half-hour conversation on Zoom. I apologize right now for the audio quality. It's not the greatest because, Zoom, you know how it is. Like, everybody's working from home or you've done it. It doesn't sound like crystal clear. But it was a great conversation. It opens up with something that I found on Twitter, and we just go from that into the book. And this is a really special episode for me because I haven't really done an interview episode in quite a long time. And this was the first time I did an interview episode after reading, a subject's book. Because, when I started this, it was just like, just me and other comics. Just I thought it was going to be a thing of us like talking shit about generational trauma and all these things and just trauma in general, which it was. Some episodes were, and some episodes like they kind of went to the left where I might have just been like my super honest, real, super self. And I was like, wait, why would you do that? Like, things didn't make sense to me. And we had some great conversations, I think. So, check out this episode. I think it's great. I think you're going to love it. Shout out to all the alphas out there. Shout out to Iota Row specifically. What a great chapter. And thanks for listening. So enjoy this interview. And if you do like what you hear after you listen to the episode, please remember to rate, review, subscribe to the podcast, leave a comment or whatever you want. It is so good. We are on Were You Good on everything. I know there's another podcast. I think there's other podcasts with the same name or similar names, but it's me because you see the images and all that. And I really appreciate everybody listening. Thank you for waiting. I know this is like it's 11 o'clock my time, and I think it's 2 3 o'clock East Coast time for anybody who's on the East Coast. I know I have some listeners from Africa and I don't know what time it is there, so I know my timing is kind of off today, but hey, we got it. It's Wednesday. It's here. I'm out of the country on vacation. I'm putting up a podcast for you. It's here, so let's do it. And real quick, I want to speak about this before I get into, the interview. I'm seeing a lot of things that are saying like God is opening a new season and starting a new season for us. And it's something that I feel and I know what's happening for me, and I see it happening for a lot of other people. And growing up, I've always kind of like felt that like when I would meet other people, and it still happens to today when I meet other people, I sometimes would just like see the divinity in other people, and I would want them to also see it in themselves because I would see so much divinity in myself. And not to be like super egotistical, but it's just like, you grow up and you're like, I'm a child of God, and you're a child of God too. And if you don't know, you should know. You're destined for great things. Like you are great just because you exist. Believe it. Go after it. And I've spent so much of my life, and I will continue to. I think it's like a function of me, where I want to make sure people that they see their own divinity, and they recognize that they are special, whoever they are. And I've been doing that so long that I've kind of lost part of seeing it in myself. And this trip, this whole COVID situation of just like kind of having to sit down and not do stand up, and to rethink why I do the things I do, and the things that I want, and where can I go, and kind of saying, have I put myself in a box in some areas, and why have I put myself in a box, and can I get out this box, and why do I feel like I'm in this box, all these things. And I feel like there is something happening, and I can't put my finger on it because I don't know what it is specifically. But I do think that there is something great about to happen in my life, and I think it's not just me because I hear all the I hear all the sounds around me that everyone is starting this new chapter, this new thing for them. So I don't know if what I just said resonated with you, listener, right now, but I hope that it did. I hope that it does because when I started to do this podcast, my mission was a little unclear, and I wanted to make sure that I could do something where I talked about mental health and the troubles and the trauma we might have faced, and you know, originally we were just like, yeah, let me just talk to other comics because I know we all been through some shit, and there is something with us to be like, hey, we gonna write some jokes, we're gonna talk about this, we're gonna be free and use our freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and tell some jokes on stage. And as I've been doing it, I've I felt like there's a lot of people who see the benefits of the podcast. I think people start looking at me differently, and I start looking at me differently, and it's just ridiculous. And the crux of it is that you listening to it, you are you're worth something. You do have divinity. You know that doesn't mean we're perfect, but that means that we have the capacity to do more. So with that said, here is the interview with Jared Washington talking about his book, Heal or Repeat, Breaking the Cycle of Intergenerational Trauma. Thank you for listening, and I'm going to be out here until next week. So enjoy your time, and we'll talk soon. Let's go into the interview. Where it's like the space is just like crowded. It's crazy. It's like, what's going on? But before we even get into the book, man, I saw a tweet today that, and I got to just share this with you because I don't know if you've seen it or if you heard about it, or this might be inspiration for book number 2, because it was. All right. It says, the desire to escape slavery was once classified as a mental illness called drapetomania.
I heard about that.
You heard about this?
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea that you're going to have Black people, enslaved people, for them wanting to escape slavery was a mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
So it's crazy. So it's just even like the idea, like the deeper I get into even talking about it and reading about it, I look at it like I think the last part I was reading about, the part that struck out to me a lot about the book was the black codes, Jim Crow laws, and how just racism, and that was like a governing body society that affected us. But to see how you can have the people in charge make up a term to classify Black people who wanted their freedom as mentally ill is really a misdiagnosis. Mm-hmm. So depending on how that's gone down from generation to generation, like if you have some slaves who are like, or enslaved people who they're like, oh, Winston, he's mentally ill because he wants to leave, but I'm sane because I want to stay and I have a good life. It's like that idea is crazy to me.
Yeah, but think about it, right? You have to make it make sense for people. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And it's like, so there's this term in the mental health counseling world is called, or the psychology world called cognitive dissonance. You ever heard of it? Mm-hmm. So that's pretty much if your morals or your values are disconnected from your behaviors, then it causes this sense of cognitive dissonance or this uncomfortability, right? And so think about it from this sense. If you have a constitution that says all men are created equal, and then in the same breath you have people over here that are enslaved, that are not equal? What that cognitive dissonance starts to kick in. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, okay, what does that? How do I settle this? How do I settle that? You know what I'm saying? Then that's when you go out, or this is what they did. They went out to get scientific research to back up the crazy stuff that they were doing.
It's it's one of those things where it's like, I feel that there are, because like in the book you do talk about like intergenerational trauma and how these things are passed down from generation to generation. I think also you do talk about just slavery and even integration as a whole. And so it's like on one side you have generational trauma from your own just family, your bloodline. And then you have slavery, you have Jim Crow laws, all these things, and living in a world where it's like, okay, we were treated horribly for 300 years. And then as we try to integrate into society as a people, just the way we move through the world, not even through family functions and interpersonal, but the way we all move through the world has been like another level and layer, I should say, of trauma that's got upon us. So I mean, there's so much to unpack. Obviously, I mean, like you're writing, you have a whole career in it. There's so much. We're not going to get to everything in this discussion. So since you have the book Heal and Repeat: Breaking the Cycle of Intergenerational Trauma, what was one of the reasons why? Well, why did you write the book?
Oh man. So, just to even keep it short, right? And I talk about this in the book, right? So in the book, I incorporate like personal experiences, right? And so, just to even, to make it short, I got into African American history by watching a documentary on Marcus Garvey, right? I'm pretty sure you read that part, right?
I read it. And it was one of those things where I had a very similar experience. I learned about Garvey and I'm like, what was he doing? It's one of those things where you're just like, he did what?
Exactly.
And about it's like mind blowing. And it's something for me, it is, I think it is a thing for me where like, and not even to cut you off, sorry, but like for me, it started to shape the way I thought of the world as I continue to move through it. And that was a part when I read in the book, I was like, oh, and so you at your age and your generation, how that changed your life trajectory. Like I'm going deeper into this. So, but yeah, continue. Yeah. Story.
That's exactly it though, right? Because then after that, watching that documentary, I was like, wow, this man was having parades with thousands of people in the streets of Harlem.
Yeah.
And I never heard of it.
Nuts, man.
Nuts. And so I'm like, oh man. So that got me into just, into Black history, African American history. Started reading a ton of books, picked up the minor, right? I was already a psychology major. So I was already into psychology, mental health, and things like that. I started working in a psychiatric hospital, picked up started going for my master's to be a clinical mental health counselor. And I started learning about trauma. And my professor was talking about, she didn't name it intergenerational trauma. She just more so was talking about how trauma can be passed down. And I was sitting there and I'm like, yo, if trauma could be passed down, then it had to be passed down from slavery. I'm like, come on, like that's trauma at its finest. Yeah. And so rose my hand up, asked the question. I was like, hey, if trauma can be passed down to different generations, then is it safe to say that trauma was passed down from slavery? And she said, yeah, that's possible. And so that's what got me into just researching about this stuff. Yeah. And I was like, I was so passionate about it, and I just was like, I'm like, a lot of people don't know about this. A lot of people have never even heard of the concept intergenerational trauma, right? We might call it generational curses in the Black community because we talk about church, right? But to really put a name, like a scientific or social science name to it, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, man, I just want to get it out. I want our community to know about this, just to be aware of it. Even if you know about it, don't do anything about it.
It is important to be aware of it. There was one it's funny because like reading the book had me thinking of just different things where like when we talk about, where you talk about in the book, specifically with the Mike Brown case and George Floyd and whatnot, and you're like growing up and hearing from your mom where it's like, hey, if you get stopped by the police, or specifically, it's another one for me, Amadou Diallo, and that's and it's just like, all right, here you go, here's your police talk, where generally you feel that everybody gets a birds and the bees talk, right? And then we just get the deal with the police talk. You know what I mean? And it's like only our community gets that. And what does that do automatically with our relationship with one, the police and people with authority, and two, we're living with a whole generation of people who don't get that talk. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's not like white people get that. I don't think they've ever got, all right, listen here. You know what I mean? Listen here. I can't use Winside, just use that one. Listen here, Bradley. It's not like that. Hey, when the cop comes, you let them know who your dad is. Okay, you go, you leave with that. You make sure they know. Yep. You know what I mean? They don't get anything like that, and we get those things, and it becomes a in a way, and as you say in the book, it is something where it's in the book, because I just went to I checked out the back of it, and there's this quote in the conclusion of the and I'm going to mess up her last name, Tabitha Parmia Kaguri, right?
Yeah.
And she says, we as a whole convey baton, we never requested yet what we have stomped upon, or what are we conveying? Basically, we've passed on this baton of scorn from one generation to the next. So we're like, okay, don't trust the police, right?
Yeah.
We've always had a healthy fear of them. They also have a history rooted in slave catchers back in the day. That's where it all formed. You know what I mean? So it's like, if this group was specifically formed to capture our people, and now slavery, there's no need to capture us anymore, but they still exist in this new form, and we still exist in our new form as free people. There's always that clash. And I wonder, what are your thoughts on, in the sense of just like generational trauma and our relationship to the police, right? With all the work that we can do ourselves, is there any work that can be done on their side?
Absolutely. And that part of intergenerational trauma I have not studied, right? Or I have not researched. However,
you got books you're sitting on, you don't even know about yet. I'm just feeling like, man, my dad's about to tear this game up, man.
But yeah, there is pieces of it that they can do as well, right? There's a whole movement about defund the police, right? I'm not gonna say I'm with or against it, because I don't know that much about what defund the police looks like, right? However, there has to be I will say this, there has to be a critical analysis and breakdown of this system, of the policing system. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Because obviously, as we're seeing the laws that were created, or that the laws that were created to protect and serve it's not across the board, right? And then you have to I think you have to change, you really have to just really carve out that whole system and rebuild it and reframe it, because you have things like of course, like stereotypes and biases and things of that nature, right? Even myself, because you have Black officers, right? Yeah. Or you have officers of color, and they might be on the blue side saying, no, our job is hard, and what would you do if your life was on the line? That argument is there. You know what I'm saying? However, I look at it like this. This is why it needs to be carved out and reframed, right? You have to change the training. You know what I'm saying? You have to change how police practices are happening. And it's because of those biases and those stereotypes. Even myself, this is what I was going to say earlier, even myself, if I'm in a I grew up in a pretty rough neighborhood, right? You know what I'm saying? And even if I see remnants of that, I'm reaching. You know what I'm saying? I'm reaching.
Yeah.
And so, what do you think the officers going to do the same thing? We're doing, you know what I'm saying? Because what we see in the media, how we're portrayed, how we're projected in the media is literally silently telling people what Black people are, how we operate, and what we do.
Yeah.
And that we're a danger, that we're dangerous.
Bro, it's been, I don't know, like just in this pandemic, I've woken up so much to it. I've always been alert of it, and I didn't realize how much some of what the media was hitting me with I got susceptible to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I grew up in a neighborhood that was like, when I was in Harlem, it was pretty rough at that time, but it wasn't like super rough. Like it wasn't shit. I think even when I was at NJIT in Jersey at that time, where you had like you were in Newark and you had
Newark.
Yeah, you were in Newark. You know what I mean? Like you've been on the yard over there before
Yeah.
like everything started changing, and you're like, oh man, the bloods are right there. You know, like level. There was a level of respect where even like where I would walk around the street and be like, all right, you in the hood, so you gotta like watch your back and be aware. But you know, for the most part, if you didn't look like you could be fucked with on that way, and that they didn't have an issue, we like, yo, I don't look like a target. I'm not a target. I'm not a sucker out here, but I'm not a gangster. I'm a civilian. They would be like, all right, they'll leave you alone. They might leave you whatever. You just, all right, cool. He good out here, right? But police, there's always that thing of like, it doesn't matter how I present myself because they're influenced by statistics that they might see about like, oh, mostly Black crime, or they might be influenced by the media, and then I feel hits us or hits me specifically when I'm like, well, I don't know what's gonna happen. Like, what one of our bros went and we were out in DC and some random shit happened with a cop there where he's actually trying to help break up a fight, and then the cops are like getting at him crazy. We're like, yo, he was doing the job y'all should have been doing. Like, what? Like, get the fuck out of here. You know, when we talked earlier, I didn't have these questions ready, and I only have a few. Like I already did like two of them. But one of the things that in your book, you're very honest, and you open up about, like literally open up in the book about, hey, this was what's going on in my family. This is what's up with my dad. Things was looking a little crazy. I'm hearing whispers. Something's going on, right?
Yeah.
With that, and it's considering that as I would take it as kind of like generational trauma, or about to be generational trauma, like that kind of unfolding. How did you deal with that, and how do you make sure to fight against passing it to the next generation?
So how I dealt with the trauma that I experienced growing up, as a child, I dealt with it in very adverse ways, right? So I was running away, hanging out in the streets, or trying to, at least, until I realized, motherfuckers was getting killed. And I'm like, oh, nah, I don't want to get killed.
Nah, this ain't for me. This ain't my life.
Sleeping with knives under my pillows and, just doing all that type of stuff, and not noticing and not realizing that something was actually wrong, or something is going on here. You know what I'm saying? And it wasn't until I got into college where I was like, man, I'm like, yo, you're depressed. You are depressed, and you need to go see somebody. And so, started going to therapy, got into grad school, continued therapy and things of that nature. And it wasn't until, my therapist was able to help me identify that the things that I went through were not okay, right? Because when you're a kid, that's your world. Your neighborhood, your family, that's your world. At least that was mine, right? And so I was like, this is just what happens in families. And she was like, no, that's not normal. That's not okay. You know what I'm saying? And so it took that, it took identifying that how I grew up was not okay, and identifying unhealthy patterns in my family, or identifying unhealthy patterns that I might have saw, experienced, and things of that nature, and be like, no, I don't want my kids to experience that. You know what I'm saying? I don't like, so for instance, I used to get whoopings when I was younger. I don't touch my kids. You know what I'm saying? I don't, and I have two daughters, and you know what I'm saying? I don't touch them at all. I don't hit them, spank them, nothing. You know what I'm saying? I might grab the arms and be like, go over there. But outside of that, no.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because I don't want to continue that. I don't want them to feel like, oh, when daddy's mad, he puts his hands on me. And that's okay. So if I was to engage in some type of relationship or whatever, if the man is upset, whether it's a friendship, intimate relationship, whatever, if the man is upset, it's okay if he puts his hands on me. My dad used to do it.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Or even if they have kids and they're like, well, I used to get spankings or whoopings, so I'm gonna whoop you. That, we hear that a lot in the Black community.
Yep, it happened to me, so it's gonna happen to you. It's like, bro, you don't gotta do it. They don't
Nah,
mean
you ain't gotta do it.
It's right.
No. So really, that's what helped, was going to therapy and identifying some unhealthy patterns that I may have experienced, and just saying, no, that's it. I'm not going to continue that. That I witnessed that. I experienced that. It didn't help for me. It wasn't healthy for me, and it was based off of the experiences that my mother went through, and based off of what her mother went through, or my grandmother went through. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, no, it stops here. This is where it stops.
How do you? So I think in my experience, to a certain degree, and other people too, it's like when they have intergenerational, like that family trauma, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the people that might have caused it or passed it down,
Mm-hmm.
how do you, I guess, convince them to go get help?
Mm.
They, that's the first part. The first part is, how do you convince them? And the second part is, if they don't, what are the next steps? What can
That's a good question, right? And the reason being is because, therapy is, or mental health period, is so taboo in in a Black family, right? Especially if there's, if religion plays a big part. I think that one way that we can try to convince our family members, or a parent or somebody who has passed that legacy, or passed that trauma down to us, is, it starts by conversations,
Mm-hmm.
right? They don't even have to be like, hey, I'm just going to be an open book to you and tell you everything that you've done and tell you how it affected me. It could just really just be easing into these types of conversations and being a walking model of health, of healing, rather. You know what I'm saying? And really just asking questions like, hey, where did you learn that from? Where did that come from? Why did you do that? I'm curious. Do you think that's healthy? Do you think that, did you think that was okay? Or why did you think that was okay? This is how it impacted me. This is how it made me feel. And I'm going to therapy for it. Would you be open to joining a session with me? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Come into a session with me. Come see my therapist, and we can talk about these things. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be a session just for, a session to pick mom's brain or dad's brain. It could just be a session just to introduce them to therapy and see how the process works. And then again, because you're that walking model of healing. And so if you're that walking model of healing, then it's like, man, oh, I see, Mike is doing well for himself mentally and emotionally. Like, I like that. He's happy. I want to get like that. Hey, Mike, what you doing?
What's the secret to the sauce? Turn off the noise. I don't know how you're gonna do it. I got to turn off the noise. And speaking of which, I saw when you come with the book, there is a playlist associated with it, right? Mm-hmm. And there are a few songs that you have. I wanted to ask why those songs and what do you love about those songs? I'll start with J. Cole's "Be Free."
Oh man, I love that song because it I can when I hear that song, I'm immediately taken back to what happened to Mike Brown.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
like immediately. Like even when I think about Mike Brown,
That's where it goes.
I think about that song.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Even the picture before he had the wild hair, he had the fitted on. He was at the memorial. I think he had on shorts and a gray shirt and stuff. Like I remember it like that. And so that part of the chapter, I think signified or was more relatable to that song. You know what I'm saying? And so that really, and so even, I know we're specifically talking about to Be Free, but just every song, I chose those songs because I wanted each song to be connected to the personal experience that I talked about in the beginning of each chapter.
Yeah.
So each song relates in some way, shape, or form. It might not be even the whole song. It could just be pieces of the song. You know what I'm saying? Like even with the first chapter when I'm talking about my trauma, and I use the Joe Budden song "Only Human," right? He's in there talking about his mental health issues, and he was talking about wanting to commit suicide but not knowing how to tell his mother.
Yo,
you know what I'm saying?
Such a complicated figure, man. He is. I gotta get this out because this is on my heart. I gotta do like the preacher. This is on my heart. Let me get this out. It's on my spirit. It's so funny to me that I feel that like Joe Budden. I was introduced to Joe Budden by Mike Machoke, rest in peace.
Rest in peace, Mike.
And he is Mike Jersey City.
Yep.
So when Joe Budden came out, it was a thing of like, yeah, Mike, I know you're from Hollywood, but you got to listen to Joe Budden, Jersey. You know what I mean? Jersey City. And since then, I've always been like in tune with Joe Budden, and even just Jersey as a whole. It's like that second home, that's family. Like, I know it's in New York, it's like, oh, these bridge and tunnel people, but it's like, man, that's Jersey, North Jersey, like Newark. You know what I mean? Like people,
yeah.
It's a different vibe, right? And I think when I look at Joe, and sometimes I hear how there was a thing with like anything that's gone on in his career that's been like a little like, yo, what's this? You did what to who and this and the third. I look at it and I'm just like, hey, it's like, sure, no one's a perfect person, but he also goes through these things publicly.
Mm-hmm.
All of his art, he's been talking about it. And
yep.
So if you're not gonna like exalt the guy and be like, yo, he's the greatest, because cool, you don't make idols out of anybody, just live your life. But it's like, but if you can glean from him at least always trying to be a better person,
mm-hmm.
isn't that something we can say, you know what, this is all right? Because like when I read the book, when I'm reading, when I opened it, like there's so many layers. Because my New York, my foundation, I was like, yo, Joe Budden, Mikey, I got, like Mike, but I go into that mode, and then all of the like career PC stuff gets into me, be like, wait a minute. Like, I listen to JPP in secret, you know what I mean? I'm like, I can't talk to anybody about this. It's gonna judge me and shit. But I do think that is that I think even his career,
mm-hmm.
him talking about mental health so openly in the beginning, having a series called Mood Music.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Doing that was something that I think helped a lot of us, specifically Black men and just hip hop heads in general, because we all kind of go through it. We need something to like kind of focus on and us push forward. And speaking of that, I think another person, not J. Cole, Kendrick, because you have DNA, right? He's Kendrick is one of my favorite lyricists. He just dropped something with
Baby King. Yeah. Dope.
Man, he
still got it.
He never doesn't have it. He just doesn't play the games that everybody else is playing. He comes out, he's like, rap. I'm here to rap. I don't know what y'all doing. I'm here to rap. I'm not renting out a stadium. I'm not going to the ball game and taking my girl out. I'm here to rap. Let me know when we rapping. That's how I feel about a lot of things. Like, yo, I do comedy, I do what I got to do, and I'm out. You like respect what I'm trying to do here. Anyway, in his song DNA, someone that's a personal song for me too. It's like all I hear when I hear that song is a lot of not like a lot of boasting, but it's also the genetic part of it. And in your book, you talk about how I think the grandchildren of the Holocaust had certain genes that were like triggered because of starvation and famine. So their children started living a certain way. Do you know if there's anything for us that's like for Black people in general or children of the diaspora in America? Are there any things that have changed for us, or things that you might be like, hey, I've noticed this, that, or the third? Do you have anything for that?
Yeah, so I went to a CEU, and it talked about I'm thinking everybody knows what CEU is.
No, we're breaking it down. We're breaking it down for everybody.
So a CE or CEU is continuing education credits, right? And so when you're in multiple different practices or fields, but specifically as a therapist, in order to keep your license active and up to date, you have to have so many amounts of CEs or CEUs, continuing education credits, where you go to these workshops and just learn about, you can go to whatever type of workshop you want, right? Related to mental health, of course. I went to one on intergenerational trauma. And she specifically, man, if I would have reviewed that my booklet on it, but she specifically talked about how in us, our blood pressures are high because of it, right? Because of like intergenerational trauma type stuff. She also mentioned about like cortisol levels, things that affect anxiety. Even like when you talk about like the epigenetic piece or how it's passed down through through DNA and stuff like that, I was taught in my grad program is that if a woman is pregnant and is experiencing depression while the child is in the womb, the chances of that child experiencing depression in their life like goes up dramatically. You know what I'm saying? And so now, how does that relate to Black people? That piece right there. Think about some of the things that we experience today, right? Think about how mental health is taboo in our community. We typically a lot. It's starting to get a lot bigger. Let me acknowledge that. But for the most part, a good number of us really don't seek out those types of services because we either lack of access or just don't know how to seek it out, right? And so the chances of experiencing some type of mental health illness or some type of mental health illness or mental health disorder while pregnant is a lot more common. You get what I'm saying? And even some of these mental illnesses are are genetic and hereditary within itself, like bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and things of that nature. Right. And so those are some of the ways that I know off the top of my head that it can impact, how that genetic piece can impact Black people as it relates to, intergenerational trauma. I'm not a science guy, so that chapter was hard for me.
Right here, like chapter 5. No, this is like this book is it's a really interesting read. I think for me it's like a short read. It's really packed with a lot of things where I don't think it's ever been laid out so accessibly.
Mm-hmm.
There's things like throughout my journey in my life and just like with my kind of focus on mental health, but not really in the in like the scholastic space. Like I didn't study it. So it's just like I felt things and went through things and talked about things openly where people are like, well, why are you talking about this? I'm like, I didn't know we're not supposed to. Okay, my bad. So reading this is like, oh, this is just really dope to see it all kind of laid out. And I know I know like I have brothers who are 16 and 18. And sometimes we have talks about certain things, but it's just good to be like, hey, now you can read this book and just check this out and just know that these are things, if life was a game, let's say, there are certain things we like, okay, these are the things that these are some of the players before as you continue your journey, because, you know, if you don't know where you're from, you're not going to know where you're going. That's just that's just that's just the bar we've all gotten. And it just rings truer and truer as time goes on. Right.
Yes.
So if there's anything, we could wrap it up. If there's anything that you want to say about the book, and also anything that you want the fans, the people listening to the podcast to know and to follow you, and you know, so forth and so on.
Yeah. So about the book, I think that it's a necessary read. Right. Just to be aware. And of course, I'm going to say that because it's my book, right? But however, I think it's a necessary read just so that we're aware, just so that we can just even know what this concept is, just so that we can even be like, yeah, I recognize that pattern in my family. Oh, I think it comes from here. Let me not pass that down. Let me do something different. And, you know, so definitely get the book, definitely read it, you know, dive into it. Like Mike said, it's a short read. It's only 122 pages. Yeah. It's a short read, but it's heavy. It's a short read, but it's heavy. But if you want to follow me on social media, you can find me at j.washington.hope on Instagram. That is my business page. Mike, you got my personal page.
Yep. Yes, I'm like, make sure you put, because first I'm like, no, you do your thing.
But so you can follow me there. You can also visit my website, www.jwhopeservices.com. That's where you can buy the book off of there. You can, if you're in the Georgia area and you're looking for a therapist, you can book me on my website. You can see some of the things that I've done in the past, as far as TV shows, some podcasts, national conferences and stuff like that. But again, you can buy the book off of there. You can also buy the book off of Amazon, Target, Barnes and Noble, and Google Books, I believe. So yeah.
But if anyone's listening, I always encourage everybody to get it straight from the source, cut out the middleman. You don't need Amazon. You don't need Google. If you can go to a website, like I'm going to put the link to the book directly in the description for this episode, but just do it there. I think that it's a more one-to-one, and you know, we should support our people and support people directly.
Yep.
That's it.
Most definitely.
That's it. I'm just making sure I'll do that. All right. Boom. That's it. Yo, so thanks again for your time. Keep going. I noticed this road, like you're already doing it, but keep doing it. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for being on You Good.
Thank you. Appreciate you, man.
You're welcome, bro.